ask that you sign up if it's public comment period, if you sign up on that sheet, and if you'd like to speak at the public hearing, any of the public hearings, sign that particular sheet. But again, they're in the back, and if you would like to speak, please sign up to speak. Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting open. Board members present this evening is Mr. Jeff Black, representing the Western Carolina District, Mr. Calvin Taylor, representing the Port Royal District, Mr. Reginald Underwood, representing the Reeder Church District, Mr. Jeff Seeley, representing the Bowling Green District, Mr. Floyd Thomas, representing the Mattaponi District, and I'm Wayne Akers, and I represent the Madison District. At this time, I'm going to ask Reverend Kevin James if he would come forward and have invocation this evening, please.
Would you join me as we pray? Our Father and our God, we are so grateful that we live where we live and have the privilege to gather on this day. Father, as we are going to remember this day in just a moment, it reminds us that our freedoms aren't free, and that to have the privilege to live in a place where we can share our hearts and our minds and have a vote in a democratic process is a blessing from you, and we thank you for that. Father, I pray for the deliberations and the work that goes on in this room. The 6 men up on the stage, Father, are public servants whose authority comes from you through the people. And Father, we are grateful for their service, and I pray that you would grant them wisdom, wisdom to make wise decisions. I pray that you grant them clarity to think only about the issues and not about all the things that really don't apply. Father, I pray, too, that you'd grant them strength of character to make the hard choices that they often have to make, because that's what goes along with the job. Father, I pray that you would lead and guide everything that is said and done tonight as decisions are made about our community and the future of our community. Father, we are blessed to live in a great place. And Father, I just pray that everything we do and say in this place would be in keeping with your will. Father, I pray that your sense of rightness would lead and guide all the deliberations. So, Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you for the privilege we have to live out our heart. And, Father, that we can trust your wisdom and your guidance in each and everything that we do. For it's in Jesus' name that I offer this prayer. Amen.
Amen. As we get ready to pledge allegiance to the flag, and before we do so, I would like for this group to have a moment of silence in remembrance of the victims of 9/11, and remember as we pledge allegiance to the flag, as Reverend James has said, freedom is not free. It costs a price of many people that are in the United States, and it has cost the lives of those that stand for freedom. And let us remember those in solemn prayer, and then we will pledge allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May be seated. Amendments to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Opening board comments, Mr. Black.
Yes, I just have a few. First of all, I want to say this past Saturday I had the opportunity to go to a fundraiser down in basically Bowling Green for a playground that the Bowling Green Primary School is trying to build. It was a great time. I appreciate the invite. We had supervisors there, school board members there, superintendent there, lots of parents and community members there. So that's what Caroline County is all about. So I had a great time, and I would definitely do that again. Second of all, the second thing, tonight I asked the 4 supervisors one of the 4 supervisors to bring up the Abundant Life Academy again. I think it's something that needs to be approved. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor?
I have none at this time.
Mr. Underwood?
None at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley?
I would just like to echo the sentiments of Mr. Black on the Saturday event. I will say that a lot of folks came. The walk was hugely successful, and I think they're hoping to build on that next year. And the folks that put it on did an excellent job. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, sir. Two, actually, Mr. Akers. One is in recognition of 9/11. 40 years ago, last Wednesday, was the terrorist tragedy at the Olympics. And I think it's mindful of us to remember that, and I just want to acknowledge that. And it can strike anywhere, anytime, and we need to be vigilant. The other one, Mr. Chairman, is I've discovered an anomaly or a problem with the county's email system. I sent an email last month, and in 20 minutes that email appeared on Facebook. So I wasn't sure. I'm having the county IT staff work on that, and I don't think any board member forwarded that email. Is that the case? No? Okay. I sent an email to, you know John Sieg? I sent an email to his wife, Robin, and that email appeared on Facebook within 20 minutes. You don't know anything?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Seeley. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. The only comment I have this evening is the fact that the board has been invited by the Caroline County branch of the NAACP to a Freedom Fund banquet Saturday, September the 22nd, 2012, St. John Church Fellowship Hall in Milford, Virginia. The donation is $35, and if someone would like to go, I have the invitation, and I have the card here to fill out as to, it is at St. John's. It doesn't. It doesn't give the time. Could be. It doesn't say what time. But I'll have that information right here. All right. The next item on the agenda this evening is presentations and reports. The first is the recognition of Department of Social Services eligibility staff for degree of accuracy in determining Medicaid eligibility. Is there someone here from Social Services? Ms. Green, please come forward, and if you have staff with you that is responsible for this, please have them come forward as well.
Oh, you're Mark. Oh, okay.
You don't look like Ms. Green, the board has approved a resolution, and we want to say appreciation to you and your department for doing a great job for Caroline County. And the resolution reads, whereas in 2010, the Virginia General Assembly passed legislation directing the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission to study the nature and scope of fraud or abuse of Medicaid beneficiaries. And whereas in response to the legislation, the Caroline County Department of Social Services was one of two local agencies in the entire Commonwealth selected by the state for a pilot study of error rates in determining eligibility for Medicaid benefits. And whereas quality assurance staff of the Virginia Department of Social Services Division on Benefits Programs reviewed 600 Caroline County cases from April to September 2011 as part of the pilot study. And whereas the state review determined that only 1.8% of the sample cases in Caroline County were ineligible for Medicaid benefits. And whereas the Board of Supervisors wishes to highlight the success of the department in administering this very complicated program. Now therefore be it resolved that the Caroline County Board of Supervisors hereby commends the following members of the Department of Social Services staff for their outstanding performance in determining Medicaid eligibility. Karen Washington, Benefit Program Supervisor. Elizabeth Blanton, Benefit Program Supervisor. Martha Lane, Benefit Program Specialist 3. Shirley Giles, Benefit Program Specialist 3. Cheryl Ossip, Benefit Program Specialist 3. Carla Edmondson, Benefit Program Specialist 3. Carla Rollins, Benefit Program Specialist 3. Tanya Crosby, Benefit Program Specialist 3. Sheila Fox, Benefit Program Specialist 2. Rosalind Berry, Benefit Program Specialist 2. Marie Robinson Jones, deceased, Benefit Program Specialist 2. It's adopted this 11th day of September, 2012. Signed by Mr. Cully and myself. We want to say thank you and congratulations to you and your staff. Thank you all. Where do you put here or here? Let's see if she can get us all.
No, I would just like to thank my staff because they are the ones who have done the work. The state average for errors in the Medicaid is 8%, and when a staff can perform at a level of less than 2%, and that's 1.8, they're outstanding staff. They're wonderful workers, and they did an outstanding job. And the errors that they did find were not of ineligibility, they were just technical errors. So my staff is doing a great job, and I would like to thank them.
Congratulations. I think the board wants to The second presentation this evening is update from Virginia Department of Environmental Quality on air quality attainment and Environmental Protection Agency Ozone Advance Program.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, those of you who have been on the board for a while will remember that we've had a number of discussions concerning air quality and our designation as attainment or non-attainment areas based upon air quality monitors in the area. Doris McLeod from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality is here tonight to update the board on the air quality issues facing this area. Currently we are in attainment, that's the good news, but that is subject to a 3-year sliding scale review. And it could change depending on weather conditions and a couple of bad air quality days in the summer. She will also present tonight a voluntary program that the federal government is reaching out to states and localities that may benefit jurisdictions that are currently in attainment that at some point in time in the future the air quality may change and they may face a non-attainment designation. So she is here to go over that program with the board and to determine whether there's any interest on the part of the board in participating in this voluntary program.
Thank you, Mr. Bencham.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Doris McLeod. I work for the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality as Air Quality Planner. And I am here tonight to talk with you about the potential inclusion of Caroline County in an ozone advance action plan. Thank you. All righty. First off, let me just start out by saying this is a brand new program. EPA just published the guidance for this program in April. The goals of this program are to reduce the precursors to smog in the atmosphere so that areas with healthy air quality will maintain that air quality and continue to comply with all the federal health-based standards. A secondary goal of the program is to help areas make progress toward any future federal health-based standards. And EPA has said that they are going to finalize a new health-based standard probably early 14 timeframe. The Ozone Advance Action Plan program is a voluntary program. So areas that participate can withdraw from the program at any point in time. The purpose of the program is to develop an action plan for any particular area that wants to participate. And that action plan would be developed as a collaborative effort between a variety of state agencies led by Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, the locality itself, and other types of stakeholders. The purpose behind the Ozone Advance Action Plan is to ensure that we have good air quality going into the future. And as part of that, EPA sort of offers the benefit that areas that participate in this voluntary program may be given extra time to comply with standards if for some reason, meteorology or other reasons, the area's air quality degrades for a short period of time. This slide provides you a little bit of background on ozone. Ozone is a pollutant that's not necessarily emitted directly into the atmosphere. What happens is volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides are emitted in the presence of sunlight, and a photochemical reaction takes place that produces ozone, which is the primary component of smog and is a very strong lung irritant that's deleterious to the health of people that are elderly, children, asthmatics, folks with emphysema, and the like. Ozone is heavily regulated by the Clean Air Act. And again, the good news is that currently Caroline County is considered attaining the new the 2008 federal standard for ozone. And that's very important for the citizens of the area to make sure they're breathing healthy air. Another benefit of being attainment is that the area avoids a lot of the penalties that come into play when areas do not attain the standard under the Clean Air Act. Okay, so this particular slide shows you, the general air quality trends we've seen in the Caroline County area. Now these numbers here are 3-year averages, and the slide is presented that way because that's the way the federal government requires us to calculate these values. The red line is the federal health-based air quality standard of 75 parts per billion. And you can see here that the Caroline County Monitor is currently registering on a 3-year average about 70 parts per billion. Well, it is a 3-year average, and that means that what happens this summer is as important as what happened last summer. So you can see last year we used data from 9, 10, and 11, and the levels from 2009 were quite depressed. And that was due to a number of reasons, mainly meteorology. Like I said before, ozone is dependent on hot, dry weather. And in 2009, we had a very cool, wet summer. So you can see that the 2009 number is fairly low. A lot rides on what happens this summer and what happens next summer. In 2012, right now, this number here on preliminary data for Caroline is 76. So the 3-year average would still be less than or equal to the federal health-based standard. However, the area's values are creeping up. And that's where an ozone advance action plan could possibly benefit the area. Having such a plan in place would provide a structure for improving air quality going into the future, a plan, if you will. And having such a plan may allow the EPA administrator to give the area a little bit of extra time if air quality does degrade to the point where the monitor is reading above the federal health-based standard. Now this chart shows you the annual values, and the circle shows you the numbers that we use to calculate the 9 through 11 data. And this next circle shows you where we are currently with the preliminary data for 2012. So you can see that the depressed meteorology, the depressed values due to meteorology and a few other issues in 2009 are really playing a role here in that 3-year average. Let me just check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything I wanted to say. All right, so if the area does decide to participate with DEQ in creating an ozone advance action plan, which we do think is a good idea because of the way the values in this area are right around the health-based standard, this would be the path forward that we would like to embark upon. If the Caroline County decides that they do want to participate, we would like to submit a letter to EPA announcing to them that Caroline County would be a participant in the ozone advance plan. Between October and February, I would be working with your staff to develop an appropriate action plan for the area. And we would like to take that action plan out to public review sometime in the late February timeframe so that we could address all comments and submit that action plan as a final document to EPA. The action plan would be for a 5-year period. During that time, DEQ would need to work with your staff to submit an annual update to that plan, generally 1 year after it was submitted as a milestone and anniversary. What would Caroline County's responsibilities be in this type of a program? I've discussed this just very briefly with your staff, and we've been brainstorming some things that Caroline County could do. Some of the things might be public awareness campaigns, helping citizens understand how their actions play into ozone air quality in any particular area, possibly implementing some low-cost or no-cost episodic measures, which are measures that would be used during time periods where forecasts show that ozone levels might be particularly high. Episodic measures would potentially ask contractors to not run gasoline-powered equipment, for instance, or ask citizens to potentially refuel in the morning and the evening hours rather than during the high ozone period days. Anything that can be done on a practical level that would reduce emissions on predicted high ozone days are considered episodic measures. We could also include some programs that are in place for transport, van pools, and the like. And DEQ would coordinate with some of the other state agencies, such as Mines, Minerals, and Energy, possibly the Electric Cooperative, to see what they have going on in ways of energy efficiency programs that are in place, and also look at AP Hill to see if they have a sustainability plan where we could pull some of that information into the action plan. So are there any questions on ozone advance that I could take at this time?
Mr. Black, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Mr. Taylor?
First of all, thank you for being with us and sharing the information. I guess one question I have is, we didn't talk about any financial impacts. Maybe there are none, but you know, I would like to talk a little bit about that to see what might be some of the financial impacts should we decide to go with this program. And also, when we think in terms of volunteering and saying that if we do volunteer for this program, we may be given extra time should the numbers get to 75 or above, or the average is 75. So how much more time are we talking, and what kinds of financial impact might be involved in this?
I believe that the financial impact to the county would be very low cost. We would try and develop programs, and we have successfully done this for other counties and other areas of the Commonwealth. We would try and develop programs where the costs are minimal, because we don't want to pull needed funds from other types of programs. You know, the sad and sorry truth is that a lot of the air quality here in Caroline County that is experienced is transported pollution. And it comes from other areas. And unfortunately, you're downwind of other areas. Now, the good news to that is one of the things I can talk about in this Ozone Advanced Action Plan is some of the upwind reductions that we will be getting. And we will be getting, in the next 2 to 3 years, we would be getting a number of very significant reductions that are upwind from you all. And one of the things that we can talk about, and I do intend to talk about if we decide to go ahead with this plan, is those types of upwind reductions. The plan would rely very heavily on those. So I think we could come up with some programs for Caroline County that are minimally impactful onto your resources. The flip side to that is, what is the cost to Caroline County should air quality degrade to the point where the area is non-attainment? And those are significant. You know, it involves federal facility expansion. They become much more expensive. There's a lot more paperwork required. Another impact is transportation. The transportation conformity process under the Clean Air Act is very time-consuming, very expensive. And also, new economic development might also be impacted because of the fact that major stationary sources would have to go through a different permitting route. The economic development folks at the Virginia Economic Development Group tell us that that's one of the big 3 questions any major company asks is, you know, is the area non-attainment? And if the answer is no, then that's always a negative, you know, in the location of that new facility. So in terms of costs, I think that there is every reason to go forward with an ozone action plan, and very little downside in terms of cost for the county.
Okay, just one other question. In areas where they are in non-attainment already, a lot of the vehicle owners, I understand, are asked to do different things in order to get cars inspected. Could you talk just a little bit about that?
Sure. Up in the Northern Virginia area, and that's Stafford included, vehicle owners who own vehicles that are in the last 25 model years are asked to get their cars inspected biennially every 2 years at station-based inspections, and it's called the Inspection and Maintenance Program, or the I&M program. We are required to implement that program under the Clean Air Act. We have no choice, and it has to do with the fact that they have a pretty severe level of ozone problem in that area. And it is a significant program in both in terms of the emission reductions that we achieve from that program, which are quite significant, as well as it is significant in terms of the effect on the citizen. Because, you know, every 2 years, a citizen has to make time out of their busy day, take their car in, possibly get it repaired if it needs repair, and the like. So we have a program like that up in Northern Virginia. We are not looking to expand that program any farther because it is significantly costly. It is a very resource-intensive type program. Again, it has very good benefit to air quality, but in other areas of the Commonwealth, we currently do not need that level of program. However, one of the things we can do is we have a large body of data from vehicles that travel on the interstates and the like, where we do remote sensing, another portion of the Clean Air Act that's required. And that's looking at the vehicle exhausts that are actually being driven. And with our data system that we have, we can also potentially examine vehicles that are registered within Caroline County that maybe have emissions issues, and we could do advisory notices to those citizens where if they so chose, they could take their vehicle in and get it repaired, tested and repaired. So that is something that we could look at for Caroline County and would be, again, very low cost in terms of what Caroline County would have to. It would be no cost in terms of Caroline County, but it would be purely advisory and voluntary on the part of the citizen, because we would need statutory authority to make it mandatory, and we just don't have the background or the support for that type of a legal change to the statute.
And I'm no way suggesting that. I just know that that.
Yes, sir. I was just providing you the background.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Underwood?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley?
Yes, sir. I guess we've talked about this before, and just so everybody knows that our sensor is at Corbin, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it is literally as far away from any of the traffic in Caroline as it can be. 95-wise, depending on the wind, that kind of stuff.
2 miles from
Spotsylvania.
2 miles.
But I guess part of my frustration is that AP Hill does a good bit of flying around Corbin. So some of what we're seeing is AP Hill related, not necessarily Caroline County related. We don't have a fleet of gas stations on Route 2. Not even, yeah, maybe 2 miles from there. Mr. Thomas is right. We've got Spotsylvania. But doing non-attainment for us and the cost of the vacuum systems and all the gas pumps, emissions testings on all the cars, and I guess the average cost of any emissions problems in a car is about $2,000. I understand that this program will give us 5 years, but I guess I'd like to hear more about what's going to happen upwind from us, because that's where our real issues come from. It isn't produced here. We don't have a smokestack in the county. Population-wise, we're not that high, and the abundance of trees around that site are just, you can't plant anymore. I mean, it physically is impossible. So I guess there's just a little frustration to me that we're going to be punished for what's upwind of us instead of starting upwind of us and working our way this way, based on population and the industry that's in the county, because we're going to get penalized industry-wise for something we don't have any control over.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. The Clean Air Act really doesn't address transport very well. I would say that I would have to look at the flight data out of AP Hill, because I would say that probably you're getting more influence from upwind transport than you are from aircraft from the AP Hill area. But however, your point about transport is very well taken. And I can talk a great deal about some of the very large reductions that we're going to have upwind in the near-term time frame that should improve air quality. I can't give you a good number for how that's going to improve air quality in Caroline. However, I do have the modeling group in my agency working on that problem, and I'm hoping later this fall I will be able to provide you a little bit of data about what's going on downwind and how that will affect your particular monitoring situation. We've got some really good industry reductions coming online to the south and to the west of this area. We have several coal-fired power plants that are going to either gasify or retire their very oldest in the fleet, and that's going to give us about 20,000 or so tons of NOx reductions, which is very important to ozone air quality in this area. We have several industry programs, permitting programs, where we are going to be requiring or have required controls on some of the major industries in the Hopewell area, down south of here in the Richmond-Petersburg area, where we're expecting to see somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 tons of actual NOx reductions between now and 2018. That's a phase-in program, so we're going to get an incremental reduction of about 20% for the next 5 years or so. And we also have some power plants that are converting their fuels to biomass, which again will provide very large SO2 reductions and also some significant NOx reductions. And lastly, the Tier 2 motor vehicle emissions program, which was adopted federally several years ago, continues to provide us good benefits. For instance, in the Northern Virginia area, I've recently looked at some data that between now and 2020, we're getting about 30,000 tons of NOx reductions annually from just the fact that we're getting cleaner cars. So we've got some good programs coming along upwind of Caroline County that we have every hope and every expectation that they should improve air quality at the Corbin Monitor. And we should have some modeling data to verify that qualitative assessment later this fall, which we will be sharing with EPA in support of all of our ozone action plans.
Do you get those numbers on a daily basis from that site?
The Corbin site?
Yes.
I believe we can actually get them on a 5-minute basis.
So could we look at correlating some of those numbers to some of the activities at AP Hill to see if that's, does the federal government have a waiver for any of those
No, sir.
pollutants?
No, sir. In fact, the federal government in non-attainment areas is subject to considerably stricter rules about what they can and cannot do in terms of expansion than, say, a private industry of the same type would be.
So could we look at numbers and look at the patterns, have the numbers and have them look at the patterns of activity at the fort to see if we can make a correlation where we could reduce some of the pollutant at those high level times? I mean, it's not fair to just one day spring the numbers out. We see our annual number. We don't know what goes on in the course of the year, nor does Fort AP Hill or the Army, and what effect that's having on the sensor. But if we could make those correlations, we may be able to bring that number down significantly just through some known activities that take place and where that sensor is based on wind direction and time of year and temperature.
We have the meteorological data and the air quality monitoring data to do a study like that. What I do not believe that DEQ has is the data of what goes on a day-to-day or hour-to-hour basis within the fort itself. I don't know that the fort staff, and I would have to check with them, I don't know what kind of data they collect. I am familiar with what other bases do, places like Fort Belvoir and Fort Lee, Virginia, and I know that they don't collect data near to that standard. The most we would be able to get would be, for instance, takeoffs and landings on an annual or semi-annual basis. I would be surprised if they collected on an hourly basis at all.
I'd like to have those discussions with the fort because I think it would benefit all of us to look at if they can help us cut down this number because it impacts them as much as it does us.
It certainly would have, non-attainment status would certainly have a large impact on Fort AP Hill. There's no doubt about that.
And I think if they were more aware of what impact they may have on that sensor, we may all be more conscious of what actually takes place during high heat, low humidity, low wind kind of evolutions around that sensor, which may have a bigger impact. Can you get us weekly numbers for like June through September?
For air quality?
For air quality from the Corbin site?
Sensor.
From that sensor?
That sensor is on the web. You can pull it up yourself on an hourly basis.
Okay, great.
It's on the web under what?
DEQ websites are under the air quality monitoring section. And if you want the historical data, we'd be happy to provide that to you in an Excel spreadsheet or what have you.
Excel is great.
We do that frequently for other uses and whatnot.
I would just like to work with the fort to see if we can't work together to bring that number down, since they're directly around that sensor, and we have so little control around it. There's not much there. There's not a business. There aren't even that many homes. So it really is one of those frustrating things that bringing that number down is like, how much closer to zero can you be here? All right, thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Akers. Ms. McLeod, thank you for being here again. And as Mr. Seeley said, the monitoring site is in Corbin. And I'm not sure how that was created. That was probably created years ago. But is there a way to locate that particular site in the middle of the county somewhere, like on 301, so it would give a fair representation of the county?
It would be very difficult for us to move that monitoring site. That monitoring site is a historical long-term site, and it has a significant number of monitors there. It monitors not only ozone, it monitors a vast variety of toxic air pollutants and the like. It was actually set up as an upwind site to the Fredericksburg, D.C. Metroplex years and years ago. We would have to get federal approval to move it, and I sincerely doubt that we would get that.
Okay, very difficult to me still means there's a possibility. And when you're talking federal, and the reason I ask is to highlight what Mr. Seeley said, and I think what we all know, that particular site is actually on the glide path for AP Hill. There is a landing strip right there, and if you've ever watched those giant planes come in, they're pretty smoky when they come in. So I don't know if EPA is going to challenge the Army, but I don't think the county really has anything to do with that, because it's really between EPA and the Army, because you're right there. And so maybe it's not as hard as we think to get a federal change. Can we look at that and see how difficult it really is?
Yes, sir. We can look at it.
Okay, I'd really appreciate that. Downtown Sparta would be a great place. 301 in the Mattapanai district would be great. Something in the middle of the county where we could say this is what we really do. Because you're right, we're being influenced by things that are A, not in our control, and B, we don't have anything to do with. So what's coming down or up, depending on the other area, we're going to all have to get our cars inspected for emissions gas. We're going to do a whole lot of things that make gas costs go up, because they're going to have to put little nozzles on there to make sure that doesn't happen. And there is truly nothing around that site other than a small mom and pop gas station, a church, and an old abandoned church, and a lot of trees. So it's not like we're doing anything. And
I would like to just clarify. EPA has just recently revised their requirements for non-attainment areas, such that new non-attainment areas, if air quality degrades in the Ozone Advanced Action Plan, it does not buy extra time or does not necessarily improve air quality to the point where we need it to. If this area were to be redesignated to non-attainment, EPA has currently revised their guidance such that the gas station controls you're referring to,
right,
the nozzles, those are no longer required anywhere. So that would not be an issue. Also, air quality would have to degrade significantly before any type of federal measures implementing I&M for vehicles would apply. In fact, air quality would have to degrade beyond what we saw in the early 90s. We would have to take a 30-year step backward. So while, again, we want to absolutely avoid non-attainment for this area, it would be the one program, the clean nozzles for the gasoline stations, would not be required. And the I&M program, it would be a significant stretch to say that that would ever be required in this area. But again, we want to minimize any chance that this area's air quality degrades into the unhealthy level. We want to keep the air quality in the healthy range for this area. That's absolutely our priority.
okay, what you just said makes us fear non-attainment less.
But
And I don't know if that's what you really wanted to do, but that's what you said.
Sir, I just want to make sure that you know what I know.
Okay, and I mean, I've got my own personal issues to want to have clean air, so I think that it's all a good thing, but I'm just saying what you said made it sound like it wasn't as bad as it was presented 5 or 10 years ago.
It probably is not.
Okay.
But again, it's definitely worth avoiding at all costs.
Okay, the last couple of things is, you said preliminary numbers for this year were 76?
Yes, sir.